Tabi, Mr. President. Mr. President, the 1987 Constitution demands that the Senate continue with the impeachment proceedings already initiated without further delay.
Ito na nga, impeachment complaint ng Vice Presidente na dismiss ng maghain ng Senado ng draft Senate resolution. Ngunit Risa Hontiveros, hindi sang-ayon. Pero bago ang lahat, maaari kayong mag-subscribe para maging updated sa mga issue at bagong mga balita. Naghain nga ang Senado ng draft Senate resolution na layunin ang pagbasura sa impeachment case laban sa Vice Presidente. Kaugnay sa pahayag ni Senate Majority Leader Francisco Tolentino na functionally dismiss na ang kaso sa kawalan ng panahon na sa patapos na ang 90th Congress. Ngunit Risa Hontiveros, tutol sa pagbasura ng Senado dito. Risa Hontiveros, walang nagawa nang hindi pinakinggan ng Senado ang kanyang pahayag. Narito ang buong detalye.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Honor. What is the pleasure of the Honorable Hontiveros?
Salamat, Tabi, Mr. President. Gusto kong magdagdag ng point dun sa binanggit pareho ng majority leader, ng minority leader, at pati ng Senate President. Yung references sa US practice and precedent. Kaugnay nung isa sa mga issue na pinag-usapan dito sa floor. Kung pwede ba o dapat bang mag-carry over yung impeachment process mula sa 19th Congress hanggang sa 20th Congress. And I would just like to put this on the record, Mr. President. Galing po ito sa isang piyesa authored ni UP Professor Paulo Tamase, nag-appear po sa June 2025 issue ng Philippine Law Journal. Sabi po dito, Emerging Issues in Impeachment, page 19 dun sa journal, allowing impeachment to cross over Congresses is consistent with American practice. Following the practice of the United Kingdom, Thomas Jefferson's Manual of Parliamentary Practice states that, and quote, impeachment is not discontinued by the dissolution of Parliament, but may be resumed by the new Parliament, close quote. The US Congress na binanggit ng majority leader, ng minority leader at ng Senate President, the US Congress has observed this for over 200 years, from the 1803 impeachment of Judge John Pickering to that of Judge Porteus in 2009. In Congress, impeachment proceedings are not discontinued by a recess. The following impeachment proceedings extended from one Congress to the next. 5 halimbawa, Mr. President, sa article na ito. Babangkitin ko lang yung pang-apat kasi yun pamilyar sa ating mga Pilipino. 4. The impeachment of President Clinton was presented to the Senate after the Senate had adjourned sine die. After, Mr. President, the Senate had adjourned sine die for the 105th Congress, and the Senate conducted the trial in the 106th Congress, Mr. President. So, for the record lamang po, dahil very, very pertinent sa binanggit ng majority leader, ng minority leader, at pati ng Senate President na following US practice and precedent. And with one very recent concrete example po dun sa impeachment ni US President Clinton. So I hope that we can consider this in our own decision-making, Mr. President, even after the rescheduled presentation by the House prosecutors to the Senate as an impeachment court on 11th June. Salamat, Tabi, Mr. President.
Duly noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Just to reiterate again, yung nabanggit ko po kanina nga, magkaiba yung sa Philippine Senate at US Senate kasi ang naiiwan sa US Senate tuwing mag-ieleksyon ay 67 senators, enough to constitute a quorum out of 100 senators and enough to convict or acquit. Sa atin po, 12 lang. Not enough to have a quorum of 13, more so a number of 16 to convict or acquit. But be that as it may, Mr. President, we have all the discussions done, and I think this would really be part not just of the discussions that whatever case would be elevated to the Supreme Court would eventually be decided in the near term. Mr. President, I seek a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended.
Of the body, I move to reconsider the approval on second reading of House Bill number 7500. This is the bill on the aquaculture feed mill plant in Panay, Capiz. I believe that it is in the best of our interest to take an opportunity to refine the provisions of this bill in the period of amendment. So I move, Mr. President, that we recognize, as we open the period of amendments, the sponsor, Senator Cynthia Villar.
Any objection to the reconsideration of the earlier approval of House Bill number 7500? Hearing none, motion is approved. Any objection to the opening of the period of amendments? Hearing none, motion is approved. Senator Villar is recognized to propound amendments to the aforementioned bill. You may proceed, ma'am.
Mr. President, additional omnibus amendment, House Bill number 7500, or the aquaculture feed mill plant of the province of Capiz. Mr. President, on the earlier approved on second reading clean copy of House Bill number 7500, we further propose an omnibus amendment to replace the phrase Municipality of Panay with the phrase Province of Capiz. This omnibus amendment will affect line 10, 20, and 24 on page 1 and line 17 on page 2 of the clean copy. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Any objection to the proposed amendment? Hearing none, amendment is approved. Majority Floor Leader?
Mr. President, there being no other additional amendments, I move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 7500. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill number 7500 is approved on second reading. Majority Floor Leader?
I move that we suspend consideration House Bill number 7500.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the aforementioned bill is now suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2821 under Committee Report number 320. This is the bill on the Accelerated and Reformed Right-of-Way Act. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
The parliamentary status of the bill is that we have approved the amendment by substitution on January 20, 2025 without prejudice to the members asking questions on the measure. With that, I move to recognize the sponsor, Senator Mark Villar, and to propound questions, Senator our Minority Leader, Senator Aquilino Cocomitel.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Senator Villar is recognized, I understand, to propound additional amendments or
We're open to interpolations at this point from Senator.
session is suspended to take up the reference of business.
Bills on first reading, Senate Bill number 2988, an act prescribing additional requirements for labeling and packaging fruit and vegetable juices, amending for the purpose Articles 4 and 84 of RA number 7394 as amendment, otherwise known as the Consumer Act of the Philippines by Senate President Escudero.
To the Committees on Health and Demography, Trade and Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
Senate Bill number 2989, an act regulating children's use of social media towards promoting their safety, well-being, and responsible digital use by Senator Padilla.
To the Committees on Public Information and Mass Media and Science and Technology.
Senate number 2990, increasing the bed capacity at Overseas Filipino Workers Hospital from 50 beds to 100 beds, appropriating funds therefore. Senator Go.
To the Committees on Health, Demography, and Finance.
2991, providing for a new visa category for digital nomads. Appropriating funds therefore, Senator Villanueva.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Ways and Means, and Finance.
2992, creating an additional legislative district in the province of Cebu to be known as the 8th Legislative District, Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Rules.
2993, establishing a campus of the Cebu Normal University in Argao, Cebu, to be known as the Cebu Normal University Argao Campus, and appropriating funds therefore.
The Committee on Higher Technical Vocational Education and Finance.
299.
The leader, Senator Risa, Hontiveros, I move that she be recognized.
Senator Hontiveros, our distinguished Deputy Minority Floor Leader, is recognized for her manifestation and her explanation of vote. You may proceed, ma'am.
Salamat Abi, Mr. President. Mr. President, I voted no to the bill expanding the authority of MTRCB since it grants the MTRCB overly broad powers to censor even speech protected by the 1987 Constitution and even material not meant for theatrical distribution. We can be specific about the materials we should protect people from. Media that, by their mere showing, constitute violations of law, including RA 7610, or the Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation, and Discrimination Act, RA 11930, or the Anti-Online Sexual Abuse or Exploitation of Children and Anti-Child Sexual Abuse or Exploitation Materials Act, and RA 9995, or the Anti-Photo and Video Voyeurism Act of 2009. Yan ang mga dapat kalaban ng MTRCB. Hindi po ang general na contrary to good morals, injurious to the prestige of the Philippines, o undermine the faith and confidence of the people in their government. More than this, Mr. President, the regulation of digital services and online content should be carefully done with legislation crafted specifically for this purpose at hindi lamang add-on sa MTRCB. Ang boses at mga sining ng mga Pilipino, offline man o online, ay kapangyarihang pag-aari ng taong bayan at protektado ng saligang batas. Ang anumang regulasyon nito ay dapat hindi labis. Salamat po. And Mr. President, while I have the floor, if I may be allowed, I wish to respond briefly to the manifestation made by the Majority Floor Leader. If I may.
You may proceed.
Salamat, Abi, Mr. President. Mr. President, the 1987 Constitution demands that the Senate continue with the impeachment proceedings already initiated without further delay. The rulings of the Supreme Court make it clear that first, impeachment is a non-legislative function of the Senate. This is Chavez versus Judicial and Bar Council, GR number 202242, 16th April 2013. And second, that non-legislative functions of the Senate are not affected by the shift from 19th to 20th Congress. This is the case of Pimentel Jr. versus Joint Committee of Congress, GR number 163783, 22 June 2004. It is true that the 19th Congress cannot bind the 20th Congress and all unfinished business will be terminated. But this is only true for any work done by us in the exercise of our legislative functions. Napakahalagang mandato po ng saligang batas ito, klaro at walang kalabuan. Once we receive the articles of impeachment, trial by the Senate shall forthwith proceed. Hahatulan tayo ng sambayanan kung hindi natin ginampanan ang tungkulin na ito sa sambayanan. Salamat, Abi, Mr. President.
Noted and entered into the records. Majority Floor Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, next to explain her votes on the following measures. Senate Bill number 2805, strengthening the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board. Senate Bill number 2965, Free Funeral Services. And last but not the least, Senate Bill number 2975, or the revised animal welfare is Senator Grace po, the principal sponsors of the said measures. I move that she be recognized.
The lady is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would like to thank the sponsor, Senator Robin Padilla, for prioritizing this measure on the MTRCB Act. Hindi po madali na idepensa ito dahil pagdating talaga sa freedom of expression at mga tanong kung ito ba'y prior restraint or censorship, mahirap talagang debate dyan. Kaya congratulations kay Senator Robin dito sa ating panukala na naipasa na ako po ang isa sa mga main authors nito. Alam natin na mabilis magbago ang panahon. Hindi dapat mapag-iwanan ang polisiya ng MTRCB. Nasa panahon pa ng Betamax, di ba? So we need a board that can act and respond not just with authority but with clear guidelines and tools to keep up in this digital age. We've always been an advocate for self-regulation. Dapat bago dalhin pa sa MTRCB, ang mismong mga producers na ang nagbibigay ng kanilang mga suggested classification. Kaya nga sa telebisyon, makikita ninyo, bago pa lang ipalabas, nung panahon natin, nandyan na yung SPG, o kaya kung ano pang mga ibang rating na kailangan ay mapaalala sa mga magulang. Isa pa po, sa panahon ngayon, hindi naman kaya ng MTRCB na lahat ng streaming devices ay ma-review. Kaya importante ang panukala na ito. Para rin ito sa mga storytellers. Through this, we will give our filmmakers and content creators the confidence to tell braver, bolder, and more meaningful stories sapagkat alam nila may malinaw at patas na proseso para maabot ng kanilang gawa ang tamang audience. Walang mabibitin na eksena at higit sa lahat, walang manonood na mapapabayaan. I am hence proudly co-sponsoring this measure for a smarter viewing experience, for safer homes, and for a broader telling of our culture stories. Congratulations, Senator Robin. My next manifestation as the main author is for the Free Funeral Services Act. Mr. President, I would like to thank the esteemed sponsor for ably defending this measure, the approval of the Free Funeral Services Act. Thank you, Senator Marcos, for doing so. Simula nung na-file ko ito noong 2016, inabot ng 3 kongreso bago ito napasa. Maraming salamat. Bagamat mabigat ang paksa, tinuturing kong isa sa mga importanteng batas na ating isinulong at na-approve ito sa wakas. Sa hirap ng buhay ngayon, pati ang namatay, mahal na rin. Mamatay ay mahal na rin. Ngayon, isa sa batas natin ang ayuda para sa pagpapalibing. Kasalukuyang nagbibigay ang DSWD ng 1,000 hanggang 50,000 para sa funeral services at 10,000 para sa mga biktima ng kalamidad. Karapatan ng bawat Pilipino, anuman ang estado sa buhay, ang isang disenteng burol. Ang burol ay hindi lamang para sa yumao, kundi para rin sa mga naulila. Ang batas na ito ay para sa mga kababayan nating tahimik na nagluluksa. May gobyernong kasama ninyo sa pagdadalamhati. Let us give the dead our last respects and the living the final act of love in saying goodbye. To my colleagues, thank you for recognizing that dignity should not end where life does. Maraming salamat po. And last but not the least, Mr. President, this is a happy bill. Thank you for allowing this, Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, with an overwhelming sense of accomplishment and gratitude. I rise today not just a legislator, but as someone who shares her home and her heart with many alagas and fur babies. Sa ngalan nila, nais kong pasalamatan ang mga kasamahan ko rito sa Senado at sa ngalan ng milyong-milyong hayop na binigyan ninyo ng boses sa pamamagitan ng panukalang ito. I've always believed that the way we treat the voiceless says everything about the kind of society we are building. At ngayong araw, masasabi ko po, sa boto ninyong lahat, binigyan natin sila ng tinig. Marami pong insidente ng kalupitan sa ating mga alaga ang lumalabas sa balita nitong mga nakaraang buwan. Nitong nakaraan lang ay may asong nakita sa viral video na ikinulong sa compartment ng kotse kung saan init na init. At makakalimutan ba natin noong Marso lang ay isang foreigner ang sumipa sa isang kuting na siyang naging dahilan ng pagpanaw nito. Sa mga ganitong pagkakataon, sino po ang titindig para sa kanila? That's why the passage of the Revised Animal Welfare Act is necessary. The bill is not merely a token legislation. We cannot continue treating animal protection as an afterthought. It is response to cruelty, yes, but more importantly, it is a declaration of dignity. Kapag tinatanong ako ng mga anak ko kung bakit sobrang concerned ko dahil sa aming mga alaga, hindi sa lahat ng hayop, simple lang ang sagot ko, kasi walang nasasayang na kabutihan. Ang malasakit ay hindi lang para sa hayop. Umaabot yan sa tao sa bawat komunidad at sa bawat bansa. Gusto ko rin magpasalamat sa chairperson, Cynthia Villar ng Committee on Agriculture, for letting me shepherd this bill. She knows that this cause is personal and that I have been championing this advocacy since I was first set foot in the Senate 12 years ago. I would also like to thank our minority leader for allowing this bill to pass. I know that he's seen that many of us here have a deep concern for animals and their welfare. Hindi lamang ito sa pag-aalaga sa kanila, kundi pagbibigay rin ng tulong sa mga tao, halimbawa kung nakagat o may mga rabies outbreak na problema. Gusto ko sanang hilingin rin na alam ko sa House of Representatives, marami sa kanila doon ang may mga alaga rin. Hindi lang aso, hindi lang pusa. At marami sa kanila ang talagang may malasakit para sa animal welfare. Sana naman sa mga nalalabing araw nitong kongreso na ito ay maipasa na rin nila ang kanilang version. Kasi dito sa Senado, ginawa natin ang ating duty na ipasa ito para maproteksyonan ang ating mga alaga. Sa mga kapwa ko mangbabatas, thank you for recognizing that a humane society is not just measured by how we treat each other, but also by how we treat the vulnerable. The Revised Animal Welfare Act is your legacy too. Maraming salamat po.
Noted and entered into the records. Thank you, Senator Po. Majority Floor Leader.
Yes, Mr. President.